welcome back to Cardiac Radio for Teens. For those of you who might not know, Cardiac Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens to learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes more sense to us and is more relatable to us as teenagers in today's society. Sometimes it's difficult for us to understand things when adults are just lecturing at us, or if we're reading these complicated books on our own. So here we try and work through those and put them in a way that maybe is more relatable to us, or maybe just makes more sense to the way our generation thinks. So just to recap a little, we've been talking about the law of preservation. So this law of that you have to preserve yourself and have these necessities. And last week we talked a lot about necessities versus things that we don't actually need, and what we do with some of these material things that we do have. So we've been talking about this law of preservation. So this week we're going to start off still in the law of preservation, and we're going to start off with a section about voluntary privations and mortifications. So right off the bat, if you were reading this on your own, you had to say, okay, what are those things? Let's look them up. So if you look them up, voluntary privations, so a privation means you're depriving yourself of something. So it could be you're depriving yourself of the proper food, or maybe you're depriving yourself of shelter, but it's voluntary. So you're choosing to do this for some type of reason, but you're choosing to deprive yourself of necessities. And then mortifications are denying bodily passions. So some people, they never are in a relationship because they're denying these bodily passions that they're having because of some reason that they have to do this. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So it's really important that if we don't know a word, we can stop and we can look it up. We don't have to just keep going and ignore those words. Because even though it's just the title helps us see what else is coming and helps us understand what the topic is going to be about before we just jump into the questions. So question 718. Does the law of self-preservation oblige us to provide for our own physical needs? So the law of self-preservation, to take care of your body, to have the necessities, does it make you provide for our own needs? Our physical needs, we need to provide for them, right? And the spirits answered, yes, because without energy and health, labor is impossible. So yes, so as much as people might think, oh, maybe this isn't really necessary, but these things are necessary for us to do, we need to go to work so that we can get money, so that we can get other stuff, but to be able to go to work, we need to start off with being healthy and having energy and taking care of our bodies, or else we're not even going to get to the going to work part, because we're not going to be in a healthy condition. Or the same thing with, right now, maybe we don't work, but we go to school. Think about it. You need a good night's rest to go to school. You need to be healthy. And when you're sick and you miss school and then you have to come back and catch up and it's really hard. So we need to provide for our own physical needs and take care of ourselves so that we're able to go to that next step and go to school and learn stuff. So then eventually we can get a job, and the same thing will apply there. Question 719. Are we culpable if we do not seek our own well-being? So if we're not looking for our well-being, and maybe sometimes it's not this person doesn't care about themselves, but maybe it's it's so busy that right now we forgot to eat, or we're so busy that we forgot to get some water before going to some type of practice. So it's little things. It's not you're completely neglecting yourself, but maybe little things that you're forgetting about. So is that our fault? I forgot to eat today. Is that my fault if I'm not taking care of myself? And the spirits answered, well-being is a natural desire. God only prohibits abuse because it is contrary to self-preservation. God does not consider it a crime for you to seek your own well-being if it is not gained at another's expense, and if it does not weaken either your moral or physical strength. So for our well-being, that's not really saying what's necessary. So of course there's in the law of preservation, there's stuff that is necessary. We talked about water, food, shelter, especially in areas that's very cold. So so these are necessities that we have. Well-being could be stuff a little extra of that. But those things, of course, if they're things that one are good things that are actually like helping you, and if it's not like hurting or affecting anyone else, and if it's not hurting yourself either. So if it's something it's not hurting others, it's not hurting yourself, then that's fine to seek your own well-being, to try and take care of yourself a little extra step further. Question 720. Do voluntary privations that have an equally voluntary expiation as their purpose have any merit in God's sight? So they're saying, do voluntary privations, which we talked about, were like depriving yourself of something voluntarily. So this voluntary privation that has an equal voluntary expiation. So an expiation, like we always talk about, we have trials and expiations. So trials are like tests we have to pass, and expiations are things that we're trying to like fix or like correct or say like go and say like I'm sorry, or things that we're trying to fix our past mistakes. So let's say like you're purposely depriving yourself here. You're voluntarily depriving yourself of something because you're voluntarily also trying to like fix something that you did or learn from something that you did. So is there any, like, in God's sight, how does God view this? And then the spirits answered, do good to others and you will have greater merit. So it was quite simple. So basically he said, it just says, do good to others and you will have good merit. So we're talking about, okay, is God seeing this as a good or bad thing? If we're doing good to others, if we're doing this to help others, and in expiation, we're trying to fix up for our mistakes. So if we are voluntarily doing this, and maybe we're voluntarily giving up something that we have to help someone else, if we're helping others, then we will have greater merit. That does count for something. And then there's a second part to this question, and it says, are there any meritorious voluntary privations? So are there any like things that you can deprive yourself of that like are very good? And then the spirits answered, yes, the privation of meaningless pleasures, because it frees you from matter and elevates your soul. Merit means resisting the temptation that drives you to excess and the taste for useless things. And it means taking from your own necessities in order to give to those in need. If privation is nothing more than pretense, it is only a mockery. So what they're saying is, so is there anything we can deprive ourselves of that's a very good thing to deprive ourselves of? And yeah, we can deprive ourselves of these meaningless pleasures that we have, or like very material things. So if we, let's say, deprive ourselves of meaningless pleasures, that means that stuff that happens to us are going to be actually meaningful, and we're not going to pay attention to maybe small material things that don't really matter. So if we are purposely like helping ourselves, like depriving ourselves of some like negative things, and we're also trying to help others, and we're generally trying to do good, then that will have merit. But also, if you're just saying it, it's kind of like your actions speak louder than your words. So if you're just saying it and you're like, oh yeah, I'm giving up this, but you don't really mean it, you don't know why you're giving it up, then that doesn't really, then you're kind of just mocking it. You're not actually doing it. But if you really are like working hard to voluntarily like not have something or to help others in need, then there will be merit. And of course we can't pretend. Maybe other people say, oh, look at that person doing that good thing, but that person knows that they're only doing it because they want recognition. Maybe the other people around them don't know that, but God will know that. So it will count eventually. So yes, of course we should like deprive ourselves of stuff that are necessities that we don't need in our lives, and also work towards helping other people while helping ourselves. And we just need to make sure that we're doing it with good intentions, and we really care. We're really trying to make a difference, not just like saying things or trying to look cool. We have to truly mean it, and then it will count for something. Question 721. A life of mortifications through asceticism has been practiced since ancient times and among different cultures. Is it notorious from any point of view? So right here in the question, here we go again with this word that like we don't know, and it's okay to not know. It's not like some of these words here too, maybe I might not mention it, but I looked them up too. I was like, what kind of word is that? Especially because we have to think that, one, this book has been translated from French and then to English. So already we know when we translate things, sometimes the words come back to words that we don't really use in English. But also this book was made a long time ago, so the way we speak is different from the way we speak now is different from the way they spoke back then. So sometimes they use different words more back then than we use now. So anyway, so let's break up what the question's actually saying. So it says, a life of mortifications, which we talked about was depriving yourself of like bodily passions and stuff like that. So through asceticism, what is asceticism? We have to go look that up. So asceticism is, reading straight from the dictionary here, it says, a severe self-discipline and avoidance of all forms of indulgence, typically for religious reasons. So it's when you are having this like self-discipline that you avoid all forms of like indulgence in certain things. So it's kind of like a typical example kind of that might come to your head would be like nuns, like Catholic nuns. They don't have any relationships because they do this self-discipline and avoidance of those kind of bodily indulgences. So they don't get married and they don't have those type of relationships. So these kinds of things, and that's just one example, these kinds of things have been around for a long time and in a lot of different cultures. It's not just one or two. It's a lot of different cultures, and although it may seem a little different, they all come back to the same rooted principle. So they're kind of saying, so what's like the merit of this? So is this like a good thing? Is it like, what's the merit of doing this? And the spirits answered, ask for whom it is useful, and you will have your answer. If it only serves the one who practices it, and if it hinders him or her from doing good to others, it is selfish, whatever may be the pretext under which it is disguised. Submitting oneself to privation by working for others is true mortification and is in accord with Christian charity. So one way that we can see, so we keep asking, okay, is this meritorious? Is this meritorious? And we're talking about like merit, like having good merit, like kind of like with God, like as if like we were trying to like rack up our points with God, kind of. So having good merit, we would like get more points in a way to think of it. So are we racking up good points, or are we like losing some points? So instead of just asking, oh, do I get more points for this or not? We have to ask, who is it useful for? And if we ask that question, then we'll have the answer. Because let's see, if this is one, who is it useful for? If this is not helping the person, and if it's not helping others, then what good is it doing? It's not helping anyone. So then it's just a really selfish thing that we might be disguising that it's helping, or that it's doing good, but it's really not doing it much of any good. But if we are being able to help others, if we are helping ourselves learn and helping others, then there is this good context to it, and it is meritorious. We are getting those like extra points, we can put it. So it's not just about doing the action, but it's also about the thoughts that are going in and wanting to help others and wanting to do good, and not just doing it for yourself, but taking that other extra step to help others on top of that. Question 722. Is the abstention from certain foods prescribed among various cultures based on reason? So some cultures, they don't eat certain types of foods, especially we can see this when it comes to meats. So different cultures don't eat different meats or meat at all, or they eat all meats, who knows? So a lot of cultures have these different things specifically about food. So they're saying, so is there a reason for this? And the spirits answered, everything that humans can eat without harming their health is permitted. Lawmakers, however, have prohibited certain foods with a useful end in mind, and in order to give greater view to their laws, they have represented them as coming from God. So basically, everything that we can eat that's not going to harm our bodies is like okay. It's like God thought of this and it was okay. So let's think. There's some berries or something that you find in the woods. You can't eat those. So those were not made. You're not permitted to eat those because those are not made to be eaten. And if you eat them, you're gonna get sick. So right up there you see, okay. But if people don't get sick eating it, then they are permitted to eat this. Like God is like, okay, like you can eat this if you're not getting sick. But of course, even some things like some people are allergic to like dairy products and milk and stuff. So maybe for that specific person, they weren't like meant to eat that. And that's fine. But so then they're saying, so like lawmakers, however, like let's say like the government, politicians, they have certain foods that they prohibited. Let's say like certain like drugs or stuff that they see signs that are not healthy for you or good for you. And so they see and they're like, okay, we shouldn't do this. People shouldn't eat this. But then they say, like, God's putting this restriction on them. They're saying, they kind of make it because, like, how is, like, the government just going to be like, oh, no, you can't eat this food is banned. So instead of doing that, it kind of went from, like, they thought, like, God didn't want them to eat those types of foods. But basically, and which is fine, we should respect everyone who, maybe they think that there's only certain things that they should eat or certain things that they shouldn't eat. But as long as everything that they are eating is healthy and it's good and it's not harming their body, then that is permitted for them to eat. Question 723. Is humankind use of animal as food contrary to the law of nature? So now here we're going more specifically into like meats and stuff and how different cultures also do that. So is that contrary to the law of nature? Like we're kind of eating like animals that are in nature. So the spirits answered, with your present physical constitution, flesh nourishes flesh. Otherwise, humans would perish. The law of self-preservation imposes on you the duty to preserve your energies and health so that you may fulfill the law of labor. You should therefore eat according to the requirements of your own physical organization. So here they're saying, so with the way our bodies are very dense, like we talk about. On higher evolved worlds, they have less dense bodies and they have less dense material. So they don't need to eat something like very like fleshy and dense like meats. But for humans like us, like we're so fleshy and so material that we kind of need that like also dense material stuff to eat. And so the law of preservation it's so we can eat and be healthy so that we can go to work or go to school and do those types of things. So yeah, if we do this from meats, then that's fine. But also for people who substitute that, they just also have to make sure that they're still keeping that healthy diet and replacing their protein and doing all that stuff so they're still healthy so they can also still go to work and to school. Question 724. Is the abstention from food, animal or otherwise, meritorious as an expiation? So now they're saying, so any type of food, like animal or not animal, if you're not eating it, is that like meritorious as like something that like you're trying to fix or you're trying to go through? And the spirits answered, yes, if you deprive yourself for the sake of others. But God cannot see mortification where there is no serious or useful privation. This is why we say that those who only seem to deprive themselves are hypocrites. So basically, then if you're depriving yourself or if you're not eating something because you're trying to, for the sake of others, to help others, and there could be a million reasons. They're not saying for what reason. So maybe it's in a condition where you don't have a lot of food, so you're giving up your food for your child or your family or someone. So yeah, in that case, like you're doing it for others. You're depriving yourself of food for other people. So there is that merit. You are doing something good. Or maybe someone in your family has a health condition where they can't eat something. So maybe you all don't eat that thing just to kind of help that other person and support that other person and not make them feel left out. So there again, we're doing something for others. We're depriving ourselves to to help that other person be comfortable in their home and in their environment. And there's a million other reasons why we could be depriving ourselves. But if we're just doing it to do it, like there's no reason, we're just starving ourselves, then that's not doing any good for us. Question 725. What are we to think of the mutilations practiced on the body of humans or animals? So by mutilation, another word that we can look up is like by mutating something, by changing it, by like altering it. So what do we think of those things, like when we mutate animals or humans or something of that sort? And the spirits answered, what is the point of such a question? Always ask whether a thing is useful. What is useless cannot be pleasing to God, and what is harmful is always displeasing. You can be very sure that God is sensitive only to sentiments that raise the soul towards God. It is by practicing the divine laws instead of violating them that you can shake off the burden of your terrestrial matters. So they're kind of asking, so what's the point of this question? So we need to think of just what God wants us to do. If we're doing good things, if we're helping other people and bringing ourselves closer to God, that's what he wants. Or we say he, but it's a habit of ours to say he, but we can call it more of like an it situation. But basically, we have to see what's pulling ourselves up closer to God and pointing us in the right direction. If we're doing something wrong that's like bringing away from God, then that's bad, and we should try and fix it and go again towards the direction of what God wants us to do. Question 726. If the suffering of this world enables us to evolve, depending on the manner in which we bear them, may we also evolve through suffering that we create intentionally? So here this is a very interesting question. So it says, we evolve because we go through something and we suffer through something, so then we learn how to adapt to it and to change to it. Like, let's say like in places where they had their food source just 1 year, like let's say if it was animals, maybe they like hunted like a lot of it and there wasn't any more. So then that would be like a suffering of this world, but then they learned how to evolve and to migrate and to move places and to find new food sources. So that kind of stuff. So there's things that happen, but then we learn from them and we evolve and we take a step in the right direction. But what about suffering that like we create ourselves? We create the suffering. Are we still going to evolve from that? And the spirits answered, natural sufferings are the only ones that enable you to evolve because they come from God. Okay, so now right there they said, so natural sufferings, those are the ones that enable you to evolve because they're coming from God. God's putting this little obstacle for you to learn. Like we said with the food sources. Yeah, there was like a lack of this food source, so we evolved and we learned how to move different places or to grow our own stuff and to develop how we make food better. So that's a simple example, but that's like a natural suffering, something that happened naturally. Then they continue. Intentional suffering serves no purpose when they have no value for the good of others. Do you believe that those who shorten their lives through own superhuman hardships, the bonds, the ferrex, and few frantic of new sex, progress on their paths? Why don't they labor for the good of their neighbors instead? They visit the indigent, comfort those who mourn, work for those who are infirm, and endure privations to help the unfortunate. Then their life will be useful and pleasing to God. When you only have yourself in mind in intentional hardships to which you subject yourself, it is selfishness. When you suffer for others, it is the practice of charity. Such are perceptions of Christ. So what they're saying is that if it's not helping other people, then it's selfish. And then selfishness, because, okay, I understand, like you're looking at the question, you're like, oh, maybe this is good, maybe this is bad. But once we come down to, okay, this is selfish, we know that word is like a negative word. So right there, we know, okay, this isn't a great thing to do because we're being selfish. But if we're struggling and suffering because we're trying to help people, like let's say we are maybe depriving ourselves of some food so that we can help other people and like share it like in times of need and all these things, when we're going through these hardships. And even like that, it's an intentional hardship. It's an intentional struggle that you're giving up your food to help someone else. But you're suffering for others, you're helping others. You're not just thinking about yourselves. And that's what's most important. That's charity. Helping yourself even when you think you don't have anything else to give. Helping other people, that's the most important thing we can do. Question 727. Since we should not create intentional suffering for ourselves that are of no use to others, should we nevertheless protect ourselves from those that we foresee or from those that threaten us? So we shouldn't create our own intentional suffering if we're not going to help. If it's not useful to other people, we shouldn't just suffer for no reason. So should we then protect ourselves from those things that we see? We see the suffering. Should we protect ourselves from it? And the spirits answered, the self-preservation instinct has been given to all beings against dangers and sufferings. Whip your spirit and not your body. Mortify your pride and stifle your selfishness, that serpent devouring your heart, and you will do more for the progress than through self-inflictions that no longer have a place in this day and age. So what they're saying is we don't have to worry about kind of like creating problems or self-inflicting problems, because we do have enough struggles and enough things that we're going to have to go through. So just work hard on those and try, and even when we're struggling, try and help others and make sure that we're working towards what God wants us to do. And with that, we come to the end of this chapter. And so next week, we're going to start off in the next chapter talking about the law of destruction. But before we leave off today, I'd like to read our message from the Daily Book of Positive Quotations for today's date, April 3rd. This one's titled, Self-Reliance. Chop your own wood, and it will warm you twice. We can all use help at home and at work, but we appreciate our clean house more when we've cleaned it ourselves, and we enjoy eating when we've planned, prepared, and served food ourselves. It's very satisfying to do things ourselves when we can, and it reminds us that we are competent, useful people, no matter how much or how little we have. What task might I normally skip, or maybe give to someone else, that I can take on today? Maybe instead of putting dishes in the dishwasher, I can enjoy the experience of washing them by hand. Or I can mow my own lawn and pull my own weeds. I'm Bia, and this has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.